Hey, Wildcats. I've been following the career of the talented Finn, Mika Murinen. He was willing to stay in Europe, but with the changes in his team there, his sights have turned to the United States and, in the future, the NBA. Could he be thinking about Pope's Kentucky? Although I've read that Cal with his Arkansas is in the running. So what now? Could the Wildcats bring him in? Let's get to the news. Mika Murinen's recent trajectory helps explain why his name has started circulating strongly behind the scenes of American college basketball, and naturally, why major programs like Kentucky have started observing the Finn with increased attention. At 18, Murinen arrived in Belgrade with an ambitious and well-defined plan to accelerate his professional development process with his coach Obradovic, one of the most respected coaches in Europe. The idea was clear, almost didactic, to learn at the highest possible level, absorb concepts, and compete in an extremely demanding environment before taking the next leap in his career. This roadmap, however, suffered a significant deviation when Obradovic left Partizan. The change in coaching staff altered the club's sporting context and, with it, the space available for a young player in training. In the EuroLeague, Murinen had minimal participation, while in the ABA League his minutes were sporadic, without the continuity necessary to consolidate a fixed role in the rotation. Even so, there were flashes of talent. Some dunks caught the eye, as did his physical presence and athletic ability. Although the statistical impact was modest, in a recent interview, the player himself put this period into perspective. Murinen made it clear that the experience in Belgrade was conceived as a learning stage, almost a bridge. He doesn't hide the fact that staying in Europe has become unlikely, although still possible, and emphasizes that his main goal has always been to prepare himself in the best possible way for American college basketball, and, in the more distant future, for the NBA. His time at Partizan, even though short and inconsistent in terms of minutes, served as a competitive and formative laboratory. It is at this point that the interest from universities in the United States becomes relevant. Murinen confirmed that there are not only inquiries, but concrete offers from traditional and competitive programs. Arkansas, Indiana, Kentucky, Illinois, NC State, and BYU emerge as potential destinations, and the Finn was direct in stating his preference for crossing the Atlantic instead of remaining in Europe. This move is consistent with the profile of a player seeking visibility, technical development, and a more direct path to the draft. Within this competition, Kentucky appears as a particularly interesting fit. The program is going through a period of transition and adjustments under the leadership of Mark Pope, but maintains its institutional weight, its capacity for individual development, and its national showcase. For an international player like Murinen, this matters. Kentucky offers structure, tradition, and an environment where young talents can grow without the immediate pressure of being protagonists from day one, something that aligns with the current stage of his career. Furthermore, Pope's work style, focus on fundamentals, game reading, and progressive evolution within the team can be an important differentiator for an athlete who is still honing his game. Murinen doesn't arrive as a finished product. His numbers in the ABA League, 4.1 points and 2.9 rebounds in about 12 minutes per game, with a highlight being the 10 points against the Split, reflect more of a developing potential than an immediate impact. In Kentucky, this type of profile historically finds room for growth, especially when combined with patience and planning. Competition exists, and Arkansas, now led by John Calipari, naturally emerges as a direct rival in this race. Even so, Kentucky remains an extremely attractive option for a young European seeking sustainable development and high-level exposure. For Murinen, the choice will not only be about playing time, but about environment, philosophy, and career projection. The fact that his name is linked to the Wildcats already says a lot about how he is valued internally in the basketball market. Even after a discrete season in terms of prominence, Murinen continues to be seen as a talent with significant room for growth. If Kentucky manages to transform him from an international prospect into a functional piece within their project, it will be another example of how the program remains attentive to the global scenario, even amidst questions and adjustments. And now, how will this competition play out?
Kentucky's basketball season under Mark Pope has been an emotional roller coaster, full of highs and lows that teeter on the thin line between hope and frustration. While Pope's debut in Lexington was hailed as a rebirth, with spectacular plays against elite teams and historic records being matched, the reality of his second year brought with it the inevitable challenges that accompany any attempt to rebuild a program as traditional as the Wildcats. The below 50% winning percentage against elite teams, now calculated at 47.1%, may seem disappointing to some, but there are nuances in this narrative that deserve careful exploration. The beginning of the Mark Pope era at Kentucky was marked by enthusiasm and renewed energy. He achieved something few coaches manage in their first months, returning not only victories to the program, but national relevance. The 8 wins against top 15 ranked teams during his first season were more than just numerical results. They represented a clear statement of intent. From the epic clash against Duke in the Champions Classic to the fierce battles against Gonzaga, Tennessee, and Missouri, it was evident that Pope was willing to face the best in the country and do it in style. These moments cemented his position as someone capable of bringing the magic back to Rupp Arena. However, the sophomore year brought with it a series of obstacles that exposed the weaknesses still present in the project. With an overall record of 9-6 this season, including consecutive losses against high-level opponents, it is clear that the work of building a competitive team is far from complete. But before we delve into criticism or gloomy predictions, it is important to highlight something fundamental. Modern college basketball is a volatile ecosystem where regulatory changes, player turnover, and external pressures create unprecedented challenges. And if there is one thing that Pope's recent record demonstrates, it is resilience. The 17 accumulated victories against elite opponents since his arrival are proof that he knows how to prepare his team for big matchups. Although the performance is below ideal, these numbers reflect competence, not collapse. It's easy to look at the consecutive losses: Clemson, Ohio State, Alabama, twice, Arkansas, Ole Miss, Texas, and see only failure. However, what many may not realize is that each of these games brought valuable lessons. Mark Pope has never been someone who looks for shortcuts or avoids responsibility. His approach has always been transparent. When you go through tough times, the question is, how much does it take to break you? And he has made it clear that neither he nor his team will break. This resilient mentality is exactly what Kentucky needs right now. Yes, the fans are frustrated. Yes, the pressure on Pope is intense. But here lies another admirable characteristic of the coach: his ability to see beyond the immediate present. He knows that the path to restoring the Wildcats' identity involves constant adjustments, both tactical and emotional. When he talks about regretting quickly and focusing on the next game, he's not making excuses. Pope is outlining a work philosophy based on continuous improvement. It's impossible to ignore the broader context in which this transformation is occurring. The current landscape of college basketball is shaped by complex issues, such as the nil rules, which have altered internal dynamics within teams. Furthermore, the rapid turnover of players, especially those with the potential to enter the NBA after a single season, makes developing a cohesive identity a constant challenge. In this context, Pope's work cannot be measured solely by the statistical record of wins and losses. He is building something bigger, a culture of commitment and continuous growth. Looking ahead, there are reasons for optimism. While the numbers may suggest difficulties, they also conceal promising signs. The ability to consistently compete against top 15 teams, even amidst losses, demonstrates that the level of talent and preparation remains high. More importantly, Pope's attitude in the face of adversity inspires confidence. He is not looking for culprits or excuses. He is leading by example, taking responsibility, and encouraging his team to do the same. For Kentucky's passionate fans, perhaps a little patience is needed. We're not talking about just any program, but an institution whose history is full of glory. In the duel between Kentucky and Missouri, the final result quickly became a sensitive point for the fans. But the game left behind a moment that transcends statistics, seasons, and even generations within the Wildcats' basketball history. In the midst of a difficult first half, Otega Owa made a play that went straight into the program's history and, regardless of the game's outcome, deserves to be treated as such. With only 2 seconds left until halftime, Owa perfectly read a Missouri pass attempt behind the defense. The interception happened near the defensive baseline, with almost no time for any planning. The point guard spun, made a single dribble, and, in an instinctive movement, launched the ball from the opposite free throw line, almost 3/4 of the court. The shot traveled 21 meters, found a basket at the buzzer, and immediately gained historic status, the longest ever officially recorded by Kentucky basketball. The impact of the play was immediate. The basket reduced the deficit to just 1 point, 34-33, and completely changed the atmosphere before halftime. More than that, it served as emotional fuel for the team's return to the court. Kentucky opened the second half with the first 6 points, including a fast-paced layup by Owa himself, taking a 38-33 lead. For a few minutes, the shot wasn't just a highlight, but a psychological turning point in a game that seemed to be slipping through their fingers. The game, it's true, took a different turn later on. Missouri managed to impose its rhythm. Kentucky couldn't maintain the momentum, and the final result ended up amplifying concerns about the 0-2 start in the SEC. Still, reducing the Knights solely to the score would be to ignore a rare feat, one that spans decades and becomes part of the folklore of a century-old program. The numbers help to put into perspective what Owa did. According to data from Kentucky itself, confirmed by Corey Price and BigBlueHistory.net, the 21-meter shot surpassed records that had stood since the mid-20th century. In 1957, still under the leadership of Adolph Rupp, Vern Hatton made a 14-meter shot against Temple, taking the game to a second overtime before a historic victory at the Memorial Coliseum. Before that, in 1949, Cliff Barker had established a nearly untouchable standard with a 19.2-meter basket against Vanderbilt, a record that remained intact for 77 years. There were even memorable attempts, such as Bo Lanter's 16.7-meter shot in 1982 against Mississippi State, but that shot was ultimately nullified due to an immediately preceding foul. What differentiates Owa's shot is not just the distance, but the context. It came at a moment of extreme pressure in a conference game, with the clock practically expired and without any prior preparation. It was reading the play, courage, and execution in fractions of a second. For a point guard, it's also a reflection of competitive instinct and confidence, characteristics that often define careers in Lexington. Under Mark Pope's leadership, Kentucky is going through a period of adjustments, demands, and high expectations. Amidst collective questioning, plays like this reinforce that the team possesses talent, personality, and the ability to produce special moments even when the overall scenario is adverse. Pope has always emphasized the importance of players who compete until the last second, and Owa delivered exactly that in that final possession of the first half. Perhaps, in the future, The game's outcome will mean that the play won't be remembered as frequently in discussions about great victories or historic campaigns. But within the rich memory of Kentucky basketball, Otega Owa's 21-meter shot already has a guaranteed place. He didn't solve a night's problems, he didn't erase the frustrations, but he offered something equally valuable, a rare, genuine, and unforgettable moment. One of those that reminds us why basketball in Lexington is never just about the final score. Leave your opinion.